mugged before. Anybody who has an evaluation of my haircut, talk to my wife. She didn't like the job my barber was doing, so she went and bought clippers. She likes to give me what she considers a full Votto. Joey Votto, the Reds' first baseman, who is Canadian like my wife, and she wants me to look as much like Joey Votto as possible. So far, the only thing she's accomplished is the short hair. It is always a pleasure and a privilege to address any group of Toastmasters. I'm going to go through a few things for those of you like Balraj who have never been to a contest before. This is the evaluation contest. Timing has been taken care of. You don't need to concern yourself with it, but it should be the standard. It's the standard timing we usually use for our evaluations at our club, 2 to 3 minutes. Once the contest is started, nobody will be allowed to come in and go out except during the minute between speakers. So don't try to get back in if you go out, and don't try to leave. The sergeants at arms have been told to knee shoot. So it will debilitate you and teach you not to do that again.
Do you have one? Because I don't see one.
Okay, Bill? I've just been told there's no sergeant at arms on the door. Okay.
That's a problem.
We had an international speech contest one time where the sergeant at arms was letting people in and out, and greeting them, and talking loud enough to tell them not to make any noise. We don't want to have that happen. Where was I? Oh yeah. We're going to have a test speaker. We used to call this a target speaker, but people got nervous about that title. I got a quick story about evaluation contest. Carrie Douglas, past district governor, was a very new Toastmaster. She had given her icebreaker, and Dan Blaney picked her to be a target speaker. And she was as scared could be. And it was a warm and loving experience for her, because this event, like all other Toastmaster events, is about the evaluators trying to help the speaker improve. So being the test speaker is a privilege and should be a pleasure. It will not be a trial. So I know the 7 evaluators that we have here are going to do the best they can. Now let's do some business. Mr. Chief Judge, have all the judges been briefed, and are they ready? Thank you, sir. The timers have been briefed and are ready?
Yes, sir.
And later on, tellers will count, and I certainly hope they don't have to be ready yet. You probably want to know the order of speakers. We have the second contestant is Tom Wentling. Third is Larry Goldsmith. Fourth is Brian Dietz. Scheduled is 5th, but not here yet. And if he doesn't show up in the next, minute and a half, he won't be in the contest. Joe Langdon. 6th, Christy Powell. 7th, Bob Genton. And 8th, we have the alternate for the contestant who had a family emergency, and that alternate is Steve Lanham. And that's Lanham. Any questions about the order from anyone? Any questions about anything from anyone? One of the things I always, for those of you who aren't interested in these things, the introduction is supposed to be just like a contest. Name, title, title, and name. Billy Hall, A Time to Let Go. A Time to Let Go, Billy Hall.
Who is she?
To everything, there is a season and a time given under heaven. The wisdom of King Solomon is still relevant today. A time to love and a time to hate. A time to destroy and a time to heal. And yes, there's even a time to let go. I had barely parked my car when I ran through the front door, flew down the long hallway to the bedside of my dear friend. Everyone in the room backed away from the bed and let me in. They watched in silence as I took hold of his hand, stroked his hair, and called his name. His hand was warm. His eyes were open, but he didn't respond. I looked to the paramedic and I said, "Are you certain he's gone?" He said, "That's what we're trying to determine. But you're going to have to let go. I think it's your heartbeat we're picking up." My friend was pronounced dead at 8:55 a.m. He knew that I would be there at 9 a.m. And he knew if he was ever going to leave this world, he would have to do it before I got there. Because I was never going to let him go. Less than 3 months later, a very similar scene was playing out before my eyes, and I was powerless to stop it. This time, it was my own father, who had just come through prostate surgery, and my mother was telling him that he would never come home because she wasn't going to take care of a sick man. After over 50 years of marriage, when he needed her the most, she was deciding for him that it was his time to go. I was horrified. Daddy was heartbroken. His doctor agreed to send him to hospice while she had time to come to terms with her situation. He begged her, "Please don't do this." She was determined. Without recounting the horrors of that final week of my father's life, let it suffice to say that after 1 week in hospice, he was waiting at death's doorstep. And I knew I had to let him go. I wrapped my arms around him and I said, "Oh, Daddy, I know you are closer to heaven than you are to this earth. And even though you made me a promise, I want you to go. I'll be okay, and I'll be with you soon." Because I loved my father, I was at his funeral. But as far as my mother was concerned, I had no intention of ever seeing her again. I was not angry with God. He didn't do this. But the anger and the hatred that was consuming me was dragging me down a dark hole to a place of near suffocation. I was crying out in prayer, "God, please take away this pain." I knew I had to forgive her. I didn't want to live a life of bitterness. How, God? My soul was tormented by the injustice of this all. Why could I not stop this? How, God, will I ever forgive? If you will let him, God can help you. And he began to show me. Forgiveness is not a feeling, it's a choice. Now, it did not happen overnight, but there was a pivotal moment when I had to take that next step towards demonstrating forgiveness. It came in the form of a phone call where I spoke kind and lovingly, as if I was talking to my best friend, something that was not normal for me and my mother. It's just never been that kind of relationship. But God had said, it's time to let go. Even the day that she called to complain to me that my father had abandoned her, God was able to give me peace. And I was amazed that as I demonstrated a love and forgiveness that I didn't feel, the peace and the joy came back into my life. And that dark hole in my heart that felt like it was permanent slowly began to fade. And eventually, I wasn't even remembering all the horrible things that she had done. I told her, "Mom, you need to write a letter to God, and you need to tell him all these things that you're upset about." But no, she can't do things like that. She will never write about her feelings. And then I get a phone call. "Billy, I wrote a letter, not to God, but to your dad. I started out telling him how mad I was at him for abandoning me. And then I wrote 5 whole pages about how good he was to me and how blessed I was to have him in my life. Billy, he was a really good man. I don't think people even realized what a good man he was." I don't know what was in those 5 pages, but whatever it was, Mom was able to let go. And today, I love my mother, much to everyone's surprise. The events I'm sharing with you have been totally laid to rest. I have joy, and I have peace. Too many times, we hold on to our past, especially the things that hurt. Some of you are thinking, "I could never forgive." And forgetting? No way. But remember, forgiveness is a choice. Why should you suffer for somebody else's wrongdoing? Don't you think it's time to let the healing begin? To everything, there is a season and a time given under heaven. And yes, there is even a time to let go.
David Levy.
Billy, I'd like to start by thanking you for that speech today. I'm a huge proponent of the philosophy that a distracted mind is an absent mind, not in the present. Whether it's video games, like my son is guilty of spending too much time on, smartphones, which I'm guilty of, or anger, which you can't let go of. These things can distract you and keep you from living in the present. So I'd like to thank you for spreading the message. I'd like to talk about your content and structure of your speech, and then go into your style and delivery. In terms of content and structure, perfect. You started with a quote from King Solomon, a quote that you would call back to at the end, which was a lovely wraparound. And in between, she shared with us 3, using the power of 3, examples of times that she had to let go. The death of your friend, the passing of your father, and then your own anger towards your mother. Lovely 3 examples. And she finished with a plea to us to make sure that we let go, so that we can live in the present and have a joyful life. Lovely message. If your general objective was to inspire and your specific objective was to get us to think about what we need to let go of, you achieved your objectives exemplarily. Exemplar, is there a grammarian in the room? Anyway, in terms of your style and delivery, holy cow, the way she casually strolled across the stage as she delivered gentle portions of her speech, the way she used her voice to be her mother, or why can't I let go, or the gentle hands of the technician who said, I think it's your heartbeat we're hearing, or the kind way you spoke to your father at the end of his life, and the use of the slowness and the gentleness of your voice. All great examples of vocal variety. Open gestures with the hands, and even this one very subtle gesture when you put your hands on your hips as your mother. It was very brief, but it came at just the right time. In every case where she used body language, it matched the emotion of what you were saying as well as the emotion in your voice. A great example from which to learn. If there is one area I could make a suggestion for you, you've got very expressive eyes. When you talked about the surprise of the things you were hearing your mother say, I saw them go up. The one thing I only saw you do once in this speech was smile. And you smiled at a point where you knew you told a joke, and the audience reacted and you smiled appropriately. But I would have loved to see you smile when you talked about the joy returning to your life and the happiness returning. That would have matched what you were saying a little bit better. And as well, when your mother wrote the letter to your father, and then she wrote 5 pages of things, and I'd love to see it in her mouth too. So please, everybody learn from her content and structure. The rule of threes, the callback at the end, all really great examples of how we should be often structuring speeches when it is appropriate. In terms of style and delivery, use of the stage, the whole space, her body and her voice matching what her words are saying, but keep in mind to smile more when it's appropriate. Thank you again for that speech.
Number 2, David Wentling. David Wentling. Tom. Pardon.
I was going to talk about forgiveness later, but fellow Toastmasters and Billy, got to hear a treat today. I need your help. If you were inspired by today's speech, please raise your hand. If you've lost someone close to you or had to forgive someone lately, please raise your hand. That's your real evaluation today. Anything that I have to say is going to be minuscule compared to that. You impacted people today with your speech. I almost lost my mom and dad in the same year. And so when you were talking about letting go, it was relatable to me. And I'm sure it was to everyone else here today. You talked about love, you talked about forgiveness, and you talked about hate. The easiest one of those is hate. We've all done that, I'm sure, and done it well. The toughest of those that you talked about today was forgiveness. That is much more difficult for all of us to do. You also talked about letting go. Also very hard. We have to let go of people that we care about. We have to let go of things that we enjoy as we get older. We can't do them anymore. You impacted me today with your speech, and I'm sure that you did with many others as well. There's just a couple things on my speech wish list for today. And that is to add more punch to your conclusion. You started with a very powerful scripture from Ecclesiastes that most people are familiar with. What I would like to have heard a little bit more of is tying that back into a challenge to all of us here. A time to sow, a time to reap, a time to forgive, a time to hate. Tie that into the message that you want to leave with the audience. In conclusion, I would like to say that I really, really enjoyed hearing you speak. You impacted us, and I think that you can impact many more people with this message. And I encourage you to give it again. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Number 3, Larry Goldsmith. Larry Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, and especially Bill. What an emotional presentation. And I could see there were several moments where it really was choking you up. So thank you for sharing such a personal story in front of such a wonderful group. Your opening was nice. I like how you took the Bible verse and you really brought it to life. It could be my generation, but every time I start to hear that verse, I always hear it sung in my head. Yes, I'm that old. But that actually brought us in very quickly. And then you brought into the story, and as you were panicked, running down the hallway to be at your friend's side and grab their hand and be there with them, I knew halfway through your sentence that something bad was coming. And you sold it very well. And some of the imagery about your hand was, his hand was still warm, his eyes were open. That was a very powerful moment in the conversation you had with the people there. It was a really great story. But I felt it was not necessary, unfortunately. because you painted such a great picture, but I think the speech could have been just as powerful if you started at the bedside of your own father. Because once you got into your father and your relationship with your mother, the speech really took off. And I think the two stories themselves were independent of each other. And I think if you were to take this to the next level, just start with your bedside. Because you did a wonderful job making the contrast between what your mother was feeling and what you were feeling. The hurt and the pain of just this moment, we can all relate to. And you did a wonderful job touching us with that relation. And then you piled on just the anger and the angst from what your mother did. And then you took us through that history, the results of that moment. And you took us along and you had us right there listening to you. I felt the next part of the speech, the reconnection, and how you had to come into terms with your own anger and bitterness, and how you had to forgive that person. I would have liked to see more of that development, more of that connection. Because when you got to the point where your mother wrote the letter, you brought us all back to where we needed to be in the story. And that was a wonderful connection point. And you built that really well. It brought us all in for your closing, where we can't make somebody realize what you did. They have to come to that terms on their own. And you sold that moment. And that allowed you to get into the closing, where you wonderfully said you have to have a time to let go, which tied back to the beginning so beautifully. Thank you for sharing.
Contestant number 4, Brian Dietz. Brian Dietz.
My fellow elite Toastmasters, honored guests, judges, what a great talk we just heard. Important in our own lives, inspiring to let go, to forgive. Billy, thank you so much for that. A lot of great things in this talk. The body language and movement turned into characterizations. I love it when I see somebody talk about their mom or brother or sister or friend and get into that character. It really brings it to us because we've all had a character like that in our own lives. It brings life to that story. And for that, we thank you. Other good things, what a powerful message. It's relevant to everyone. Do you know who you have not forgiven that's weighing you down? It really gets us to start thinking about our own lives. The speech was about improving us as a people. And that's very powerful to me. I must say I was a little biased because my father had to pass while my mother was away. She would never have let him go. She could not. And so that story became very close to me. And again, I thank you for that. Because to let go would have really helped my own mother in that situation if she could have heard your talk before. So next time, let's get that a little better. There are a few things I want to call out. It was a great talk. We have to start getting a little nitpicky. Billy, how you doing today? That's a greeting. Did we miss the greeting? When we come and engage an audience, I want to know you're with me. I want to know you know I'm here with you. Engage the audience. Let's get that greeting in there. How about your movement? I've been doing this for a purpose up here because I'm moving without a purpose. And I ran over to the bedside. A great movement with purpose. But when I just begin to pace, I just look like I'm pacing up here. The body language, though, great at times. In the middle of your stories, you're seen to be clenching fists. It may come off as something you don't want to give off. An energy, a tension. Even when you said peace, your fists were clenched. Something to consider. The last I'm going to talk about to me is the most important. It is the purpose of your talk to let go, to forgive. Have you forgiven someone in your life? Have you been forgiven? Do you remember how that felt? The lightness of being? You're selling forgiveness up here. And I want to be sold if you can't tell. So give it a little more color, add it a little more repetitious through that, and show me some feeling rather than just the cookie cutter. I have joy. I have peace. Let me feel you. And those to consider will take that talk from good to fantastic.
Contestant number 6, Christy Powell. Christy Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Billy, your speech definitely gave me several things to think about, and I enjoyed it because it gave me things to think about. One of the things I noticed, first off, was how you were using words precisely. The example that I'm going to use that stood out for me the most was the fact that when you referred to your father in a more casual term, you used daddy. But mom was never mommy. She was mom. And even before you said, not that type of relationship, I knew you didn't have that type of relationship because of the word choice and the nicknames you were using for your parents. When you talked about seeing your friend, the 8:55 versus 9, and just that 5-minute difference. And yeah, like I said, your words, the very specific words and putting us into the emotions. You did a good job of keeping your quote straight and making sure that you had a time to let go and not specifying what to let go of necessarily. Your gestures, I thought, added to the speech. When you were talking about hugging your father and the hands and the much to everyone's surprise that you got your whole face into it. Now that said, I think there were some areas that you could improve the gestures. Much of the speech, your hands were here, or even when you went out, they were at shoulder level or slightly below. With a room this large, I just encourage you to get more gestures up. Also, you paced back and forth, but you really didn't use the whole area that you had. And the eye contact, making like some strong eye contact for a few seconds with different people in the audience. And then the other thing that I would like to point out was when you talked about, at the very beginning, I had barely parked my car, and you went into this setup. I think if you had just started with, as I walked into the room, and talked about the people moving. Because when you said the parking space and then paramedic, and I wasn't sure if you were in a hospital or hospice or his house. So just to kind of get us right into that room, the setting. This was definitely a powerful lesson for me about how to let people go, to let emotions go, to experience forgiveness and how it helps you and can help us. And so I really like this speech, and I'm very glad, Billy, that you shared it with us.
Contestant number 7, Bob Genton. Bob Genton.
My fellow Toastmasters and Mr. Toastmaster and Billy Hall especially, a time to let go. What a wonderful personal story with a most definite spiritual message that ended well, in my opinion. I really enjoyed the way you described the events that took place that put you into the position where you were angry with your mother because of her opinion of what to do with her husband. And then through it all, you were describing those points with passion and sincerity. Clearly, in my opinion, it was a speech from the heart. Did not require any notes. You went ahead and described it, building to a crescendo of will I ever forgive my mother? And then the very important part of your presentation, that telephone call that came, that presented you with the option, the spiritual option, the God wink, as I would like to say. That yes, there is certainly a time to let go in forgiving your mother. Throughout the speech, your tone was perfect, very subtle, very solemn, very important with that type of presentation. A few suggestions that I might like to add to you. In that particular point, there were some points in the story that I would have thought higher voice inflection might have been appropriate, especially the phone call with the message from the phone call that was really a message from God. A little bit more voice inflection in that. Perhaps the hand gestures, they were becoming repetitive to me, although in itself they were very poignant and appropriate. Take a full-length mirror. Work your speech in front of that full-length mirror with the gestures and the voice inflection, and I think you will have a more powerful story to present to the audience. In summary, 2 stories that we heard. Your personal experience, very well done, very well articulated, with a resounding positive spiritual message that you needed to let go. I really enjoyed too the last phrase, to everything there is a season in heaven and a time to let go. Very well done, Billy Hall. I look forward to more speeches. Mr. Toastmaster.
Our 8th contestant, Steve Lanham. Steve Lanham.
First of all, Billy, let me say I really appreciate your talk today. I feel privileged to have heard it. Mr. Contest Chair, fellow Toastmasters, and especially Bill, I think you have a speech here that really resonated with our audience today. And sometimes when I give an evaluation, I'm reminded of some good advice someone told me one time. Tell what you saw, tell what you heard, and tell what you felt. So I'm going to follow that format today. But what I saw here today was a very confident speaker up here. Your eye contact with the audience was great. And as you moved around, you included the rest of the audience. When you were on that side and this side, you included all of us in your conversation. And I felt that was very good. And at times when you wanted to kind of talk spiritually, you would lean in and kind of squint your eyes, almost wink at us. Didn't quite wink, and you would actually help us feel like that we were inside the story, part of your story. I thought that was great. And your gestures, you were up here, and you were using your arms and emphasizing shrugs when you talked about your mom, and you were very active up here. But as far as the body language, if I had to offer one gift to take this speech to the next level, I think you did some pacing a little bit up here. And you might want to think about something we saw yesterday in the speech contest. And that's when David Levy got up there, and he created a timeline for us, for his speech. And he started out here, and we all read from left to right. So on stage right here, you could have story number 1 here, and then come over here, and then talk about story number 2. So that was your encounter with your friend. This is your encounter with your dad. And the third story would be your encounter with your mom. And that way we have a timeline throughout the speech, visually on stage. And then if you want to refer back to a particular part of that, you could say, remember my mom, my dad, my friend, and we would see that because of the hologram created on stage because of that. So I thought what I saw up here was a very confident speaker, and I really enjoyed that. What about here? Well, I heard you using vocal variety. That was very, very important. When you talked about the deaths, you got soft, you slowed down, you used pauses very well. But when you talked about your mother and your anger at her, you got loud and you talked very strong about that. So I heard that. Organization-wise, you had a narrative-type story up here, but each story had its own narrative. So I thought you did a great job with that. If I had to offer a suggestion on this, take this to the next level, I felt like that your mom's story and your dad's story, there was a relationship between those. The friend story, not quite so much, So I'm not sure exactly what to replace that with, but you might think of something else, because it felt like you used that as an intro to your story, and we had to wait a little bit for the oomph of your story. So what I felt like the story really resonated with me and with the rest of the audience. I enjoyed it, and I look forward to hearing more speeches from you in the future.